So today I want to walk you through exactly how to get the best results when you're hiring a Filipino. Now, whether this is your first time recruiting in the Philippines or maybe it's your 10th or 100th hire, I can guarantee you there's some cultural differences that occur that need to change the way you interview. So let's start at the top. The very first thing I want to talk about is the cultural differences. So there's some very key cultural insights that you need to consider. Let's talk about them one by one. The first one is trust and rapport. Now, I talk about this often, but Filipinos build trust through rapport, getting to know you and building a relationship. The quicker you're able to do that and build a level of rapport, the better the interview process is going to go. You are just going to get more information out of them. So, at the very start of the interview, ask them how they are, ask them what they got up to on the weekend, start breaking down those barriers so that you can get more out of the interview process. The next thing is respect and hierarchy. Now, it's probably not completely unusual to think about the fact that Filipinos are extremely hierarchical, very strong dictatorship, and they're very used to a top-down decision-making authority. So when they join the interview, if they call you ma'am or sir, it is completely out of respect. So consider that and don't necessarily downgrade it immediately. That's fine if you say, hey, no need to call me that. But keep in mind that there is a lot of respect that happens out of a country like the Philippines. The next thing is communication style. Now, communication in the Philippines is very much high context and harmony seeking. So what they're going to try to do is they're going to give you a lot of information at the tail end of any of your questions. Now, you might be hoping they skip to the chase, but it's important you listen because they will get to the point, but they're very used to communicating with a lot of surrounding information, which you will thank them for one day. And the next thing I want to make sure you understand when it comes to these key cultural insights is team versus individual. Now, the Filipinos as a whole are very team focused. When you ask a question, it's important that you recognize if they're talking about we or if they're talking about them. It is very common for them to answer questions in a team context. So if you're asking specific examples of what they did in that role, they may give you information about what the whole department was doing. You want to drill down and say, tell me exactly what it is that you were doing and your responsibilities. That will give you far more insight into their capabilities. The next thing we need to talk about is your hiring criteria and how you prep yourself for recruiting. Now, you can't just write a position summary, throw it up on a job advertisement site and hope for the best. Number one, you need to be compliant when you're recruiting in the Philippines, so that's problem number one. But number two is you're just not going to get the talent. Now, when you think of the Philippines, they are very much aligned with their job description. What is on their job description is what they're expecting to do. If there is something that they need to do that's outside of that job description, we're just going to start to have problems with that in the future. So you're going to want to think through what that looks like. One of the things I encourage our clients to do and that our client success team helps with is building out these success profiles. Now, the purpose of a success profile is to understand not just the entire role, but what are the top 3 to 5 things that this person needs to be able to do for you to call it a success. When you build that out, think about what that looks like in the first 30, the first 60, and the first 90 days of operation. If you're crystal clear that in 30 days, my new marketing assistant needs to be capable of uploading all of the video content, making sure we're responding to all queries or comments that come back in, and perhaps doing some content on Canva, then you know that's what you're expecting and your training and onboarding plan will be aligned with that. So be very crystal clear on what that looks like. You want to have your non-negotiables, you want to have your nice to haves. Yes, there is a lot of expertise, a lot of training, a lot of education that happens in the Philippines, but really think about what you need for the role. Sometimes we overestimate skill, experience, education, and don't think about actually, culturally, what they'll look like. Which brings me to, who are they going to be working with? The way you embed a Filipino really is important in the organisation. And what makes a big factor in that is who they're going to be reporting to. The cultural integration and the way the cultural behaviour is between your hiring manager, their direct manager, and your Filipino will make all the difference. So if you have someone that is very direct in the way that they communicate, consider that when you're hiring the person in the Philippines. The next thing that's important is you're going to start getting CVs and you're going to get, or resumes, and you're going to get a lot of them because let's face it, there's 119 million Filipinos and working for an Aussie company is quite prestigious. So we're going to get a lot. You don't want to necessarily always take that for face value. They're not always great at really documenting on their resume what they're good at, what they've been able to achieve, and what the outcomes have been for that organisation. So read their cover letters, look at the way that they have applied for the position, and really look through to see, does this person actually have something that I'm missing? Sometimes writing on paper doesn't always give you the full picture. So now we move to interviews. Now, we've already talked a little bit about some of the interview tips that will really help you get the most of it. We talked about introductions with rapport building and making sure you're starting to break down some of those barriers so that they speak up. But the next thing you want to do is you really want to set your expectations and explain the role. It's really easy to say, hey, we're a company that does ABC and we're going to need this role to do ABC and move on from that. Really dive in. Explain to the candidate what this role looks like, what the expectations are going to be, what a typical day may look like for them. One thing that gets very underestimated is how competitive the Philippines market is right now. So you are not the only person that will be interviewing this person for a role. So think about that. You have to sell yourself as much as they're selling themselves. You then want to talk about skills and experience. And here you want to use open-ended questions every day of the week. No closed-ended questions, particularly with Filipino teams. Open-ended questions to talk to them about their skill, their experience, and what it is that they've been able to achieve. You may even ask them questions like, if we were to give you this task, what would be the first things that you would do to take a handle on it? Then we want to understand behaviour and cultural fit. And so you might ask them some questions about what their previous managers would use, what words their previous managers would use to describe them. You may ask them questions like, what environments do they prefer to work in? You really want an understanding because let me tell you something, you can train skill, but you cannot train for cultural fit. So look for that and make sure you have properly vetted it. Then you want to close it out. Now, most people at this point will say, thanks, awesome, we're interviewing a few other candidates and we'll get back to you. Wrong. You need to make sure you give them next steps. A warm candidate is a candidate with next steps. Even if that's going to be in a couple of weeks' time, try and speed up the process. Remember, it's competitive, but you just need to let them know that there is a date that you are going to get back to them. The next thing you need to do is test. Test, test, test. Now, there's a reason people don't do this. They typically interview, you probably are not spending anywhere near what you'd spend on an Australian salary. You're busy, they might be doing things to support you, but potentially they're not customer facing, and so you're just trying to rush through the interview process and hire someone to help you ASAP. And that is totally okay. But hire, slow, fire, fast. That is what we are always working with. So I encourage you to test. Now, testing doesn't have to be convoluted or complicated. It can be really simple. It can be, hey, this is our type of business. Can you go away and pull together just a couple of quick marketing briefs for some social media content we have coming up? Or if you're hiring a more technical role, here's some questions we're going to need you to answer. The offshoring provider you're using should have testing software that also will give you a library of questions and surveys to help you quality control and skills test for the particular role that you're looking for. So do not skip that step. It is really important. And then finally, we want to make sure that we are going to onboard them effectively. So at this point, we've really defined what it is that we're looking for. We have reviewed CVs, we've found some candidates that will fit the mold. We have moved through to interview stages, and for the ones that we know straight then, straight now, aren't the right fit, we've told them and we're moving on. For those that haven't, we've given them next steps and we've pushed them through to testing phases. When those test results come back, you may choose to do a secondary follow-up interview to get the results of that test and walk through their thinking. Often you may see some not so great results in a test, but when you dive down and see the way that it was answered or the conclusion they've come to, potentially they were just missing out on some context. So a follow-up to that test is very important. And then you're going to hire them. And the onboarding is where you're going to make it or break it. You have successfully now managed to interview in a format that will get you the right talent at the right price at the right time. But if your onboarding fails you, the whole thing will break down. So you want to make sure that during your onboarding you are putting time aside. It is really easy when someone is remote to just not even think that they're there, to throw them a couple of emails or jump on a quick video call and assume they can fill in the gaps. We're talking about a culture that is high context. So you're going to want to set aside time. Explain to them the business. Explain to them exactly what to expect in a day-to-day. Set up your meeting time so that they know they're going to have conversations with you throughout the week. A really quick and easy way is feedback loops. Every day, set a meeting so that they can come back to you with feedback. If you get your onboarding right, that person will be with you to stay because you have started this off on the right foot and you are ending it with someone who is destined to be in your team and helping you succeed. So I hope that helped. That's how you successfully hire your Philippines team. If you need any more information, please reach out. We'd love to help.